Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to our webinar on apprenticeships. Um, Today we'll focus on the apprenticeship process and the top tips. My name's Aisling. I'm from the Classroom to Boardroom Foundation, and my role is very much to work with students in schools across England, from year 10 right through to year 13, providing support on applications and building up your confidence and your skill set when it comes to considering what you would like to do after school. Today, though, our focus is going to be on what the experts have to say. We've got 3 alumni from the foundation who completed their year 13 studies last year and spent a lot of time applying and focusing on the apprenticeship process. So today they're going to focus on what they recommend or kind of their experience of kind of managing the recruitment process when it comes to I suppose balancing your schoolwork, your personal life, taking on like feedback and being resilient throughout the process. And generally, I suppose their motivations for applying to apprenticeships. So today we have Ashmead, we've got Musa, and we've got Zidon, who are going to share their experience. I suppose first of all, I'll ask each of you to share an introduction to yourselves. So, whatever you'd like to cover, but if you mention about your school, the subjects that you studied as part of your sixth form or college, and your current role or where you're at now, and generally just how's it all going. So I'll start with yourself, Ashmead.
Hey guys, so my name is Ashmi, and in school I studied engineering, business, and science, and those were CTECs. And I was applying to a lot of apprenticeships, and I got into a credit investment apprenticeship. It's a level 3 apprenticeship, and it's with the company CVC, that is a private equity and financial advice firm. So it's been a month, and it's going pretty good.
That's brilliant, Ashmead. And what about yourself, Musa?
Hey everyone, so my name is Musa. During my A-levels, I studied maths, economics, and computer science. I did apply to apprenticeships when I was in year 13, and I got through to the final stages of a few of them, and I ended up getting an offer from Deutsche Bank for their technology, of course, called Technology Innovation Data something. It was TIDI, something like that. I ended up declining it because it wasn't the path I wanted to go down. I thought it was, but it wasn't at the end. And so right now I'm a first year economics student at the University of, well, at SOAS. And I'm just going to be reapplying to apprenticeships this year. That's the plan so far.
Brilliant. I look forward to seeing kind of what you've learned throughout the process. Musa, thank you. And what about yourself, Zidon?
Well, my name is Zaidun or Zaid. Introductions, I went to a school called LAET, or London Academy of Excellence, Tottenham. Studied computer science, maths, and physics as A-levels. Did decently well. I applied. Originally, my plan was to apply for university, but then I was always looking for other pathways. And since year 12, I was looking into degree apprenticeships. I applied to about 5, got into close to finalist for 2 of them, and I'm currently working at a hedge fund as an IT engineer. Been doing it since the beginning of last month, but it's been going really well.
Brilliant. And I suppose just because you were the last to speak there, like what's one thing that you feel helped you kind of in being successful in those processes?
I think it was definitely okay. I kind of have to say 2 things because they link together. One is the way I presented myself. And for example, you guys can see when I'm wearing a suit. I don't exactly need to wear a suit. People just tend to wear shirts. But one thing that I made very much like a theme for myself since year 13, year 12 was wearing like smart clothes so that whenever a speaker came, they'd automatically look at me and think, okay, he's someone that I can rely on. And I got told by a lot of my interviews that the fact that I came in presentable gave them a different perspective to how, to what kind of candidate I was. And the second thing would be networking. So for example, whenever I applied, I would tend to connect with these people on LinkedIn and then either ask them questions or just talk with them, etc., to try and figure out more about them so that I could obviously improve my chances of getting in.
That's brilliant. I think like sixth form, I know I've gone to many schools where students are wearing suits like from year 12 right through. I suppose, do you feel that that had a kind of impact in that value of kind of how you presented yourself daily?
I think it definitely did because it showed because one of the many things about dressing smart is that it can show that you're well put together, for example. Especially for example, if you're coming up to an interview, if you come up to an interview, let's say for example for me, it's coming in, maybe go for a haircut really quickly just to make sure that they know that I've put the effort to come in presentable. And from what I've been told based on my mind, because I asked them just before I came here, I asked them what's one of the things that made you want to take me in. One of the CTO said it was the way I showed my personality through the way I dressed and the way I spoke. So I'd say it comes with also the way you present yourself in the sense of being confident with your own abilities, because they want to pick someone, but if you don't give them the reasons to pick you, they might not pick you at all.
Okay, that is very, very helpful. And I suppose just on that, Musa, so we've got confidence and we've got kind of dressing the part, being presentable. What are your other qualities that you feel are really essential for apprentices?
When it comes to apprenticeships, I feel like one thing to understand is that they are so competitive. I think when you're applying to the top apprenticeships, you're looking at odds that are, 0.5 or less than 0.5% chance of getting in. They have, if we take Goldman Sachs for an example, they have maybe 30 apprentice slots and over 5,000 applicants. So keeping that in mind, you have to ensure that you keep your head above the waters. You don't let that kind of statistic get you down. You need to prove to them, as Zaid said, that you need to prove to them that you're the perfect applicant. And I guess on that topic, it's also resilience. I think you have to be willing to send off as many applications as you can, keeping the level of that application the same throughout. You can't let the level of your application drop down at any point because you never know what kind of apprenticeship will come through in the end. But my kind of advice is just to stay at the top of your game throughout the application process, because I feel like apprenticeships, they last. I feel like last year I remember applying from October all the way through until like April, May, late April, May. So it's a year-long thing, and you have to just be willing to really put in the work and grind for if you want that apprenticeship.
And I suppose with the different apprentices that you applied to, and the applications you made, was there any key trends of like, I suppose if you were to give one skill that every company was looking for?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest one was commercial awareness. So I mainly
Okay.
applied for financial services and kind of the finance route. And all of them wanted me to talk about things that were happening in the market currently, the history of the firm, kind of future prospects of the firm, just kind of really good commercial awareness. No matter where you apply, commercial awareness is the main thing that I feel like companies want you to have.
And how did you develop your commercial awareness? Is there any good sources that I perhaps could share with students that you find helpful?
Yeah, so it varies from the company that you're applying to. So I remember when I was applying to JP Morgan, I was reading their ESG reports, I was reading their current M&A deals, their previous M&A deals, deals that didn't work out so well, just in case they asked me about that, deals that really worked well, just in case they asked me about that. It was just really researching the firm and their impacts that they've had. I know that a really good tip is ESG is so big right now, considering a lot of banks and a lot of different places are trying to get to net zero. I think by maximum 2050. I've read that a lot. A lot of firms want to be net zero by 2050. So reading ESG reports will be very good to show to an interviewer.
Absolutely. And actually the fact that the firm is running an apprenticeship program also very much links to ESG on kind of the diversity and inclusion aspect of the firm. So that's an incredible point to make. Something I will absolutely share forward to anyone I'm speaking to. And Ashmead, with kind of the application processes, like what was your expectations kind of setting out on that journey of seeking apprenticeships, and how did it differ, or did it differ to the reality of it?
So when I was applying, my only goal was to get into something, and I was so confident that I would get into something, and I didn't realize how hard it would be. So I was so confident to the point that I didn't even apply to uni, and it was slowly going downhill before I got into this one. Um, so yeah, I never knew that it was really hard. Um, Another thing is that I didn't expect myself to be applying to some roles, because I was very focused on doing something to do with property or surveying, but it's like you soon realize that if it's not going well, you have to open your options. Like you have to apply everywhere. And now I'm in finance, which I didn't see myself being there, but it's about the company as well. When you're applying, I didn't realize that how important name is. Like having connections is super important, and when you're in an industry where everything is like so widespread, it's very important to go towards that way as well, not only interest, although do what you are interested in. um but otherwise it was okay. It was a very lengthy process to apply, and a lot of the time it's like all of my information was in my CV, but I had to write it out separately, which was really like putting me down. Like I didn't want to do that. It felt so like long. I don't want to keep doing that over and over. But after you realize it's worth it. Um, but yeah, that's
Brilliant.
how. Yeah.
So it was quite tedious, I
Yes.
suppose, like having to do the same thing over and over again. I suppose when you kind of realize that, okay, I need to open my options a little bit here, I suppose what were some things that you did to ensure that you were still a great candidate for finance rather than like surveying or property? Do you have any kind of tips there on kind of being adaptable like that?
Yes. So the thing is, with an apprenticeship, it's a learning role. So you're not gonna know everything. So I think what you want to show to any company is your key attributes, your attitude as well, because learning, like anybody can do learning. We're at a young age, and that learning is what we're supposed to do. So as long as you show that you're passionate about learning about the role, I think that is one of the main things that got me into this apprenticeship. Um, I was just putting the idea out there that, I don't know much about finance. Like we just came out of school, but I am so like what's the word? I can be adaptable with the culture, and learning just comes later. So it's like if you show your true self, which is very like everybody says that, but you got to be honest, because they really see what type of person you are through that.
Okay. That's actually something that we say the whole way through for university students as well who are applying to internships, is that authentic, like being authentic is key to standing out. As you mentioned, Musa, you've got 5,000 applicants applying to 30 positions. So being your true self is vital there. I suppose, Zaid, do you have any, like, how did you go about that? How did you go about, so you kind of, you dressed the part, you showed your personality through kind of what you wore, and you went the extra mile to like really make it a visible make it visible that you're putting effort in. um was there any kind of key highlights that you kind of reflect on now to be like, that helped me be memorable, kind of aside of that?
Um, I think one thing was being prepared. So, for
Hmm.
example, I remember I had full work across the current company I work at. I had an interview with actually Ashling, and I knew that the interview was in a week's time, and so what I did was I thought of the most common questions that she might ask me. For example, introduce yourself. It tends to be the question that most interviews would ask you. So then I wrote something. I wrote like a little blurb to understand how I would describe it. And I remember actually Ashley was telling me that she was surprised at how summarized that introduction was when she asked told me to tell her about herself, myself. That's number one. Number two, I would say, because the thing with researching companies is it's depending on the company. So, for example, with the hedge fund that I currently work at, they specifically work to make sure that not much information about them is known on the website, etc. That's just because they have a certain different market. They can't really be advertised to, for example, the general market. So for that reason, it's a bit harder to know about certain companies. So then when it came to here, again, I was asking these managers to make sure that I give you guys the right tips. The one thing they said specifically was they really looked at how keen you were to learn. Like Ashmi said, the way you act, for example, the way you ask questions, they really care about you using active listening. And so I feel like by me showing, for example, asking questions to stuff that I didn't understand, etc., allowed me to stand out more.
Brilliant. So that preparation. I actually remember your interview very well, and I think what stood out to me in your initial introduction was that you told your story, but you also highlighted immediately a challenge that you had, but the real like the action that you took in that challenge. Um, like it was very naturally put together. And I think for me that stood out because you when you're going into a workplace, especially at such a young age with very little experience, being able to adapt and take on feedback is vital. And Ashmi, that is something that was highlighted as a real big decision making factor for yourself as well, with CVC, and how you adapted and really actively demonstrated that you were putting your immediate learning into action. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you did that, or kind of like how did you see that as being important?
So for me, it was a bit different as so CBC, they usually work with private deals or whatever. So there's not much online. So when I was going into the interview, I had memorized like some information that I got off Google. It was like very little, but they never ended up asking me anything about it. So it was a kind of not our memory test. It was just like they were just testing us as a person, seeing how we were. In my interview, there was a lot of different stages. On the assessment day, there was different groups, and we were working on different things. But basically, they just wanted to see like how we would react in different situations. And I got some feedback before the final assessment, and I just used that feedback and turned it into a good point. So they said that I fit into the culture well, that like you could see my kindness, I guess. And so on the final interview, I could hear myself saying this probably like two or three times. I was just trying to express myself that I would fit well into the culture, and this will like enable me to learn further. So what you do is you you just use your feedback and you say that I'm going to work on it, instead of saying like you can prove it actually as well by using a past experience that you had. But yeah, it's there's a lot of different ways to come at that, but I think yeah, that's what I did. I just
Yeah.
turned it into a positive.
So you reflected on like one of the key qualities, the positive things that they kind of mentioned about like you fitting into the culture and your kindness, and then you really emphasized how kindness is important within the firm.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And do you remember any of the tasks that you needed to do as part of the assessment day?
So one of the tasks was organizing emails with the importance. One of them, one of it was a debate on AI, if it's good or bad to society. Another part was like a mini interview with like one singular person on your own. Um, there was definitely something else, but those are the three I remember.
Because that's quite a mix. And I know Mason and Dave, with some of the processes you were in, there was similar kind of a mix of interviews and like prioritization tasks and that. I suppose Musa, like was there any other tasks that you had to do as part of an assessment day?
Um, I guess most of them were standard, where it was just an assessment center and then single interviews. But I remember when applying to JP Morgan, and this is just advice, if you do end up applying to JP Morgan, there's a stage called the Insight Evening, and the name is so deceiving. It's not an insight at all. It's interviews, and you can't find it online. I don't know why, but when it says insight evening, all it is interviews with different members of JP Morgan. So you might get lucky and interview with a hiring manager, or in my case, I got quite unlucky and I was interviewing with, it was I want to say it was a VP, but because it was a VP, the conversation we had was too technical for me at the time, because I thought it was going to be an insight evening where we got like a tour of the firm or so, and so I didn't put too much preparation time into technicals, and the interview was about technicals. So I feel like that was the weirdest one. But other than that, most of the apprenticeships I applied to were standard, where it was just on an application, higher view, assessment center, interview, and then that interview will be the final one.
That is incredible insight. That actually you can get caught out very easily on that. Interesting. That is very interesting. So I suppose I remember Musa you mentioning at one stage about how you approach interviews, but having kind of had that experience and talking to someone, a VP who's very senior, that has a one set mind in the sense that they want to like see your technical ability. Um, what would your tip be if a student went into a kind of a conversation that mightn't be what they're prepared for?
So my tip is whenever you're talking to anyone, whether that be anyone, it can be someone at your level, someone more senior, someone, or if you're more senior than someone, you have to understand that conversations in a professional setting have to be, most of the time, they have to be mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So whether the mutual benefit is that you provide them an insight into how your mind works, or you provide your insight into a solution of a problem, the conversation has to be mutually beneficial, unless you're talking to kind of a manager where he's just trying to help you out. But you need to ensure that whatever you're inputting into the conversation, there's something to benefit off of. Like you're not just talking to have the conversation. That
So
would be my big tip.
it's purposeful. Um, okay, and it links very much to networking too. So I know Zaid, you've mentioned already about kind of the importance of networking in your journey. I suppose kind of how did you feel kind of I suppose the first time that you spoke to a professional? So you were speaking to the CTO, like very senior person within a hedge fund. Like, can you remember that first interaction and kind of how did you feel about it?
So weirdly, the first time I met this company or the CTO was the day the Queen died, because on that day there was a career fair happening at my school in the hall, and so they just had a bunch of companies, and you just go around and speak to different people. Now, when I went to the CTO, I remember we when we met, we just started. I just firstly asked about the company, and then afterwards we more started talking about just something in tech. So because I'm someone who loves tech anyway, I just thought of a random topic and then we just started talking about it and thinking about bouncing up our own opinions. And then it just went from there. I feel like when it comes to the different people, no matter how senior they are, there is always a chance to have a conversation with them in the sense of whether you want to know something. Like Musa said, especially with senior people, it's much better to show them that you're eager to learn again. Ask them questions about something like a big topic or something, and then elaborate on that. And one of the things that I feel like for me personally helped when it came to speak to people like that, for example, was using all the other past experience I did. For example, I was someone who would always go to every fair, etc., or working at McDonald's. So one thing that for some reason the CTO really liked was the fact that I worked at McDonald's for 2 years. I never thought a higher up would ever love the fact that someone worked at McDonald's, but according to him, he loved it because of the fact that it showed that I was able to balance A levels with working on weekends, uh, fast-paced area, etc., all of which come to the company.
Yeah, that's very true. I think, you know, there's a lot of pressure I feel that students face now about having a certain amount of work experience behind them, kind of in year 10, year 11, year 12. And that pressure is quite deflating for students because it is quite hard, really hard to get work experience. So I think that's an excellent point on that, you know, the things that you might be doing that might not link directly to where you want to be or the applications you're making is still really valuable. And it shows those skills like dedication and your ability to balance and be a problem solver? Because I know McDonald's, it's a very busy place no matter what branch it is. And I suppose kind of so would I be right in saying, kind of to summarize your point, it's to not be afraid to talk about the things that you have going on in your life, and just to make conversation about a topic that you pinpoint as mutually of interest?
Yeah, definitely. I'd definitely say that. I think one last thing I do really want to add is when it comes to applying for degree apprenticeships, firstly, understand that there's a sense of balance that you have to have. For example, right now I have work 4 days a week and I've got uni 1 day a week, and then obviously I've still got assignments that are due, etc. Now, for some people this works best, for some other people it doesn't, and then it also depends on the company that you work at. For example, I know a company, for example, Bloomberg. I know a few people who are working Bloomberg as apprentices. They can choose to work from home for most of the time or come into work. Whereas for my role, because I'm in a smaller hedge fund and they require everyone to be in, I'm in about 40 hours a week. So it kind of just depends on the company, and you need to make sure you take that into mind and make sure that you start to prepare yourself, because having that balance is going to help with making sure that you don't overwork yourself or underwork, etc.
Yeah. Because that's another point. You had a lot going on, like during year 13. Like you obviously had to reach really high grades to get into the degree apprenticeship that you had applied to. So I suppose, like, how would you go about finding that balance? Kind of, so when it comes to balancing, say if you had four big things to balance, how would you go about that?
So for me personally, well, first I had school. I was also tutoring. I was also a Islamic teacher on most weekdays, and then I had work on both weekends. I think the way I balanced it was using a calendar. So I'd also go gym 3 times a week. The way I'd use is mainly just have a calendar and then try to create a routine in a sense. I knew there was school, and I try to make time for certain things and then prioritize the things I need to do for that week. Um, I felt like it was a skill that was very important for me to learn earlier, because late, especially in A levels, right now, you're applying for your university, you're doing the entrance exam, etc. It becomes much harder very quickly because you suddenly have a lot of free time to revise, and you don't understand how to balance that revision on top of making sure you're relaxing, etc. And I feel like using a kind of to make and stuff like Pomodoro technique, that's something that I really loved using during revising, etc. Allowed me to balance my time to make sure I spent a specific amount of time learning something and then suddenly just take a break in between to make sure that I wasn't overstressing myself.
Yeah. What is that technique? Sorry.
The Pomodoro technique is where you work for 25 minutes, take a 5 minute break, and then after the fourth time, you then take a longer break, etc. But there's
Yeah.
various other ways you could also do that.
Yeah, it is actually. I use that quite a lot when I was doing study. Yeah. The other one's the 2 hour rule. If you are somebody who gets your head stuck in and you kind of want to spend a bit of time to get into a particular task. But yeah, super helpful. I suppose just on that question, around kind of balance and time, Musa, Ashmead, would you like to add anything else on how you approached balancing your time during year 13?
Yeah, I don't mind adding something. When specifically apprenticeship related, I remember I made an Excel tracker. So on that tracker, I had the name of the firm I was applying to, a link to their portal. So when you apply to apprenticeships, they have like a portal that you go to and then you send off your application and such. A link to that. I had like 4 stages, since that's the normal amount of stages that an apprenticeship takes. The date that I applied to it, a deadline section. So when you apply to an apprenticeship, let's say if you send off your application, they'll normally say you have a week or you have 5 days to complete these tests. I'd note that down as well, so I keep track of the date that I have to get them done by, and then kind of a note section where I can put in anything. If I got rejected, normally give you a reason why you got rejected. If I passed, I would note down anything that I did well, so I know to carry it over. But yeah, definitely build an Excel tracker to track everything that you do.
Brilliant. And for those of you on the call, reach out to us at the foundation. We have created one that it's not as detailed as yours, Musa, but feel free to reach out even as a starting point to supporting you on tracking those applications that you might be putting in. Oh, thanks for that, Musa. And what about yourself, Ashmead? How did you go about balancing year 13?
Same thing. I also made a tracker on docs using a table.
Hmm.
Um, it wa- yeah, it's all about making a plan if you like, I used to print out monthly calendars to like write in what I need to do for that week. Yeah, honestly, if you have it all out on paper or online, it's so much easier to follow.
Brilliant. And I know you touched on it, like, that you applied to everything. Um, but when you kind of like, what was it about CVC that stood out to you, I suppose, more specifically? Because I know that was a bit later in kind of your applications.
Um, it was how nice they are because they actually did something different where they didn't look at our CVs first. They assessed us like a video call. And they checked our CVs after because we're still out of school, our CVs aren't like amazing. So that was really nice. Um, Also the how big the company is. It was something like I couldn't miss out on. It's pretty big.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, that the brand aspect of it I think is a big one, especially if it's a non-degree apprenticeship. It's a really great bonus to ensure that that brand is going to support you regardless of how many years the apprenticeship is for. Oh, brilliant. And Musa, how did you remain so positive? I know I'm changing the subject here somewhat, but how did you remain so positive throughout the process? It's clear you had a very strong strategy and with the tracker. Um, but yeah, I'd love to hear that because it's a big piece.
So when I was applying, I ensured that I always had a safety net to everything that I applied for. So I knew that I wanted to go down the path of being a degree apprentice, but then my safety net for that was still applying to university, just in case degree apprentices didn't work out. And I'm happy I did apply to university. And then when it came to university, then it's personal statement. And then my safety net for that was going to be to apply for internships. And then if I didn't get internships, my safety net for that would be to get work experience. So there were different levels that I carried on applying to, so that if one thing fell through, I understood and I knew that I had something else in the works that could prop myself up. And now I'm at a stage where I'm at a good university, and at the same time, I have a developed CV because of all the internship experience that I have, just because my degree apprenticeship didn't work out. So definitely have safety nets for everything that you do. Like having
Mhm.
one safety net isn't enough. Have four for everything that you do.
And how do you go about balancing those safety nets?
Um, Again, Excel, build a tracker.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just building a tracker, keeping track of dates. There will be times when you mess up. So, so I'm in a process where I'm applying to spring weeks right now as well, and I forgot to look at my tracker for one day, and I ended up missing a deadline for UBS, and so now I'm completely out of that equation. But then
Okay.
it's because I have another 5 spring weeks that are on the way. I know that okay, I have 5 UBS. What I've learned from it, keep an eye on my tracker from like much more in
Hmm.
way more now. And because I have more on the way, I know not to feel too down about not getting UBS because I have something else coming up.
Yeah,
So again, it's just more safety nets.
yeah. Okay, that sounds like a lot of work, but it actually really reflects on what you need to be doing when you do get into the workplace as well. And I suppose, um, Ashmead, was it yourself that mentioned having a calendar, or Zaid, that I think that those like reminders about like checking that tracker could be a really good practical thing that everyone can do now to get started. And Zaid, kind of thinking about kind of the the level of professionalism that is often required for apprenticeship processes. Did you find that helpful moving into the workplace then as an apprentice? I know you're only in there just over a month or coming 2 months.
Actually, I'm here right now. I'm still in there. I haven't left yet. I think yes. So for me, it's slightly different for me because generally most degree apprenticeships are from bigger companies. So people might think, oh, because it's a smaller company, it's not the best. However, being a smaller company means you're around most of the senior people automatically just straight away. So funny story is 2 weeks ago, I just randomly bumped into the founder, and then I was the way it happened was I was in the toilet washing my hands. The founder comes in, and then he washes his hands, turns around, just shakes my hand, says, "Hi, I'm the founder," as if I didn't know he was a founder, which is very scary because that's a billionaire just shaking my hand. So it did kind of scare me in that sense. But because of the fact that it's a small company, it means that I'm around all these senior people and they all know me already, which means that I have to be very quick in making sure that I'm staying professional. I'm saying the right thing they've said up because again, they're going to remember me for the next few years. And I think one thing that I want to make sure that everyone understands is these companies want you. They want, especially once you get the role, they want to make sure that you love them so much that you stay with them. So, for example, the CTO straight up told me, look, after the 4 years, we're going to try our best to keep you because you're going to go through the 4 years of staying with them, of them training you to become the absolute best employee possible. So it would be a massive loss for them to invest so much in you and to lose you. So then the hardest step for you is just to get in. Now, the getting in starts by starting early. Applications can close really quickly. Number Goldman Sachs, I think it opens out in October, but or February, I forgot which one, but it closed very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's also UBS, for example, as we just said, UBS. I know people from UBS who told me that they did it on the last deadline and they were just about to get in. They're just about going. My friend Ibrahim, who's, by the way, this is the membership group, there's only two of us. He applied on the last night at 15 minutes before for some reason, and somehow he said. So the best thing I'd say is to start early because the earlier you start, the less you have to stress and the more time you have to prepare and plan for it.
Yeah. And especially like because we're the Classroom to Boardroom Foundation, what I would love my job to be 50% of the time is on the phone to students like yourselves, and for people on the call, kind of given that support, and kind of just soundboarding on the um kind of what interviews are like, and especially for the processes we run, so such as CVC credit or with Rockos, so that you have that support, that you're going in as confident as possible, because the people you're meeting in those interviews are like, well, not quite the founder, not yet anyway, but the CTO, really like senior, really well experienced people who may want to focus on technical questions so that you're able to manage those conversations. Um, so that's a really good, a really great story as it's in explaining what it's like. But Ashmi, do you have anything to add now that you're in CBC? Do you feel the process reflected on, like, the professionalism that you needed in the process reflected on the day to day of being at CBC?
Yes, so I also came in a suit for the assessment day. Um, it's all about like Zaid said earlier, it's about perspective. So you got to show them the best part of you because they don't know who you are. It's like they're just random people. And you have to, even if you fake it, because after that you'll be able to do it truly. Like if you tell them that, if you show them that you're capable of doing things, even though at that point if you feel like you're not good at something, you can fix that later. But as long as you show that passion, it's super important. And yeah, the professionalism is very key. Like that puts out an image of you. um but yeah.
Brilliant. And I suppose for you, Ashmi, what was the most challenging part of the process? Like, I suppose of year 13.
I'll be at 13.
Yeah, sorry, I changed my question last minute. What's the most challenging part of year 13 for you?
Probably balancing the schoolwork because I personally had a baby sister born, so I was juggling like um yeah, a bunch of stuff plus the applications. So yeah, it was that was yeah, juggling is probably the hardest thing, and to be honest, it's good because when you're gonna do an apprenticeship, hopefully, guys, that's the main thing, like doing the work, like doing a 9 to 5 and then doing studying as well. My course is level 3, so it's not like as much as Zaid, but it's still a lot because it's finance. I don't know anything about it, and I'm suddenly have an exam in January. So it's you really, if you have that experience of how to balance, it will just help you in the future because yeah, that's just life.
Yeah, brilliant. So that balancing act, I look forward to talking to you more on that, and we can put together a bit of a tips booklet for students as they're progressing through into their apprenticeships. And Musa, you've had quite a bit of experience in the workplace as well. Um, I suppose what would be your top tips for students kind of entering the workplace?
I think at the age that you're at now, getting into the workplace is, as I said before, it's the hardest part to get there. But once you're there, you need to understand that everyone knows that you're in no position to kind of rush into technicals. And let's say if you do end up going to finance, no one expects you to know how to use Bloomberg Terminal, how to make all these financial models. They understand that you're there to learn from them, and they're more than willing to help you. I feel like when I first started the F13, I knew I wanted to end up in finance. I had this idea in my head that all of these senior people, they kind of were, I want to say elitist, where they didn't really have time to help us get to their position. But, after spending time in the workplace, it's the complete opposite. Everyone there is trying to help you up and trying to get you to do your best. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is make the most of when you're there. Don't keep to yourself, be as extroverted as possible, talk to everyone on the floor. There's an opportunity in the summer with an organization called Inter University where they can put you into different companies, ranging from finance to law. And the way some internships worked was you kind of stuck to one desk. But I know people that did that internship, but even then they kind of just got up and rotated across the floor anyway. They went up to shake everyone's hand, introduce themselves. And I feel like that's the biggest thing to do, because when you're in that professional workplace, you need to ensure that everyone knows who you are and everyone knows your name. So that when you do come back to apply to, whether it be their apprenticeship or their spring week or summer internship, you can say their name in an interview, and then you might be able to ask for a referral or something along those lines. But yeah, I just say make the most of it and ensure that everyone, when you leave there, everyone still remembers your name.
Absolutely. And I think being open and like networking is very much what that would be. Means that they might actually say, "Oh, keep an eye out for this student that I met," similar to Zaid. Like and kind of because you were spoken about a lot at Rockus before the process even started, from what I understand, which is incredible. So yeah, that's a fantastic point, Lisa. And I suppose, Ashmi, would you like to add anything? What would your top tips be for students?
Is this to apply to the
For when it comes to the process or even where you're at now, being in the workplace?
um you have to be likable. Like it's a very vague thing, but you have to remember that this company, they want to invest in you. And nowadays, like how Musa said earlier, it's like ESG, these kind of things, like diversity, they really want to take that into account. And it's like when people come into a workspace, it's a 9 to 5 and they're going to do it for a long time. They want the people around them to be enjoyable to be with. So you have to show them that you are compatible with their um, culture. And to be honest, when you're at the assessment or like in a video call, being friendly is probably the main thing to show that you're comfortable. It's okay if you don't know something, you just say no, sorry. It's like you have to show that you're capable of being with in sorry, you have to show that you're capable of being um a part of that culture. So is really important. It doesn't sound like much, but like it it really is. And I got really lucky that the company I'm with is really good. It's also very small. So I'm also like the partners, the office is like right in front of me. It's everything is very connected. So yeah, it's it's
Yeah,
very hard
no,
to explain.
but no, but you're absolutely right. And like I know when I'm speaking to students and in classrooms quite often, I'm like, these are the skills that companies want to see. So you've got like they want to see your resilience. They want to see that you're quick learner by taking on feedback. That's how you can action that, that you're dedicated, that you're balancing, a part-time job, you're getting good grades, that you're giving context on the different aspects, and that you're open to having a conversation and you're able to read like like what somebody's interested in as well, and add that into the conversation. So it's a really good point, and especially for smaller firms as well, the culture, and even larger firms, culture is becoming one of the biggest things that companies are focusing on. It's the people working there that is what makes the company or the firm who they are. So that you're able to add to that culture. And what I mean by culture is that quite often it's that teamwork, it's curious, it's entrepreneurship. So generally being quite open-minded. But I do recognize as well that some people might be quite shy and might be naturally introverted. Does any of you have any tips on, how to balance that energy if people aren't as extroverted as what this might sound that they need to be?
I think a tip that I would give is to practice. So I'd say try to practice with friends. Try to. I feel like one big tip is investing in yourself. Spend time understanding what you're good at and focus on being even better at those things. Because the best person is someone who is confident at the things they're good at and they can express those. Even if you're shy, it doesn't. For example, in my team, I have some people who might be shy, but then with our team, they tend to talk with us more, and some people are much more extrovert. It doesn't matter whether or not you're shy. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a girl, you're a boy, or whatever. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you come with you bring yourself and you try your best. I think some people tend to spend too much time being thinking about the worst case scenario as opposed to the fact that the likely chance is that they are the person that the company has been waiting for. Like if you put that as your mentality, then you tend to feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident in the interviews, in the research, etc.
That's an excellent point. I feel like I've been saying excellent point to everything that you have all said, but that's a really good point about focusing on what you are good at and what you enjoy as well, as they're your strengths. So if you know you're good at your strengths and they weigh up as what the company are looking for, regardless when if you get the opportunity or if you unfortunately don't, you know that, well, these are the things I know I'm good at, and that you know how important they are, and that how important you are essentially, for perhaps a different workplace as well.
One very quick thing, sorry.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people need to understand is that just because a role is tech or is finance doesn't mean that it has to be very technical. For example, in our IT team, in my IT team here, there's a project manager who focuses specifically on just helping people code or do X other different things. So no matter who you are, there's always a thing you could do in tech. There's always a thing you can do in finance. I'd say they're probably the best things to apply for because if you're someone who wants a big salary or whatever in the future, tech and finance tend to be the ones that pay off the most. But that doesn't mean that you have to be a programmer stuck in a shadow in the room, just coding for hours. Um, One other thing is to look out for is if you're working in finance, there tends to be longer hours. For example, my shifts are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So 10-hour shifts. But for some people, they can't do that. For some people, they can. So just keep that in mind before I say try it out, but don't just do it the government ship because you get paid the money earlier. That's not what about it. It has to be if it's for you. If you think you can do it, then try. I say apply for that in university at the same time, and then figure out which one you want to do depending on who you are as a person.
Hmm. That's a great point. If you think about it, I'm going to open this up to the three of you, possibly as one of the last questions. But if you think about, for students who might not quite know what they would like to do, they just know that they're a practical learner, they don't want to go to university, that the idea of debt scares them or whatever their situation might be, but they know they want to do an apprenticeship, they're not quite sure what in. Do you have any tips, or have you experienced that yourselves? And how would you go about approaching that?
Yeah, I definitely have some advice for that, since I had an idea that I wanted to go into finance first of all, but I also studied computer science at A level, and towards kind of January, February time, I was really enjoying it because that's when our coursework and stuff was due. And then I thought to myself, hold on, I might also like tech, as in a tech degree apprenticeship. And so I had to I decided, okay, I'm going to end up applying to them as well. I feel like apprenticeships in general is not about saying that you're going to apply to one apprenticeship or one type of apprenticeship. It's about casting your net as wide as it'll go and how much you can handle. So I feel like even if it's a thought that you might enjoy consulting or you might enjoy audit, apply to all of them.
Yeah.
It's about it's about how many you can handle. That's why I say apply to as many as you can handle. That to the point where your application's progress or ability doesn't drop. Apply to as many as you can. Even if it's one thought that I might enjoy it, apply to it anyways. Because there's no harm in applying to it.
It's brilliant. Because I know actually that like it nearly links back to what you started with saying, Ashmead, around that you applied, you moved kind of what your interest was and you applied to whatever you could apply to. It's brilliant. And do you have any final tips? Do you have any final tips, Musa?
I think my final tip was, I feel like everything was kind of already said, but apprenticeships is a numbers game. It's not about, I want to say, obviously it's about how you are as an applicant, but sometimes even really amazing applicants can get filtered through for a silly mistake or a little mistake. So apprenticeships are honestly a numbers game. Apply to as many as you can, and that's the best way to ensure that you'll definitely end up getting one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'd say.
And just on that, it's definitely a numbers game, and it's extremely competitive. I would definitely suggest for students to choose 3 to 4 or even 5 companies that they really like the idea of and go that extra mile with those companies. Just that similar to yourself, Zaid, with kind of the suit, they kind of really researched and understanding the company, and going as deep as possible into the ESG or the different market knowledge that they have available on their website, if any. And if they don't have it available, try reach out to people that may work there through LinkedIn or just by following the company's LinkedIn page. Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to say, Zaid or Ashmi, as a last thought?
Very last thing, if you haven't already, make a LinkedIn. Trust me, it becomes very important. You don't understand that. It's basically just a professional social media, right? That's all it is. The reason why I say that is because almost every single hiring manager, before the applicant even comes, they tend to go on LinkedIn and search the person's name. Because if they find it, then they can see everything that you've done. So your CV is meant to be a very, very quick summary of what you currently have done. But let's say if you've done some other random stuff, put it on LinkedIn. Start connecting with people. For example, I don't know if I'm speaking for you guys, but if you guys have any questions, connect with us on LinkedIn or something and ask us questions. We'll be more than happy to help you with different things, etc. And the biggest tip I'd give if you don't know what you want to do is ask questions. Just ask questions to random people, go to the career fairs, ask them questions, grow them just to understand why they like their role and then see if you can see yourself doing that same role.
It's brilliant. And Ashmead, what about yourself?
Yeah, just to add to that, with the LinkedIn, it can help with nervousness as well. Sometimes seeing somebody's face before you do the interview, that actually calmed me down like a lot. Yeah, and just a tip for nervousness is like you have to remember that even if you get declined, they didn't know you, and that doesn't mean that you're like bad at something. They just judging you off of these little videos or these little interviews. So it's like that shouldn't put you down because they don't they're not your friend or anything. So it's like you should always keep applying and always try your best.
That's like I'm going to try to change my vocabulary, but that's a fantastic point, Ashmead, because you are right. There's a criteria that they need to meet. They've got a certain number of applications coming in, and they're not getting to meet you. I don't really think people settle into their job until 6 months in. So that's when like someone's really getting to know you, like really settling in. So that's a very good point. And like there's loads of options. I suppose to summarize, it's casting your net as wide as you can. So not only have a plan A, but have a plan B and a plan C. To be open-minded to what you are capable of doing. Taking time to reflect on yourself, to focus on what it is you're good at, and using that as your your absolute superpower to move forward and to leverage you. And that's what you can really focus on. Even if questions come up that you mightn't be as strong as, you're focusing on this is the strength that I have, and bringing your best self to the interview or any engagement that you might have with the company. So wearing your best dress. These lights are going off on me. Wearing your best, like look as professional as possible, and simply smiling. And if you're not as as confident or as you know kind of, I suppose, like outgoing as other people, then making sure you're taking time for yourself with your friends or just on your own afterwards is a way to revamp your energy. But practicing being as outgoing as possible just by practicing your interview skills, your networking ability with people that you know and trust. I suppose the final point that I will make is thank you very, very much to Musa, Ashmead, and Zaid for joining us. Please do reach out to us at the Classroom to Boardroom Foundation, so either through Dartmouth Partners or Pure Search, or reach us on LinkedIn, um, because we can support you on kind of that next step. We can help share the contacts of our great panelists today if you would like to follow up. And there's many different supports that we can offer more generally on a one-to-one basis. And one thing that we're definitely going to do in the coming weeks, so before the winter break, is we will do a LinkedIn workshop for any students who might find that helpful on how to approach that. Thank you very, very much for your time today, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. All the best. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.